In what has been a surprisingly quick turnaround, a new interview has come out via IGN regarding Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon. Featuring FromSoft president Hidetaka Miyazaki and creative director Masaru Yamamura, some of the questions we've had since we were shown the reveal trailer for AC6 have been answered. Let's have us a little chat about it. Hello everyone, my name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. I'm a small creator looking to make YouTube my full-time career, so if you're interested in news about Armored Core, please subscribe. Thank you. In the new interview from IGN, journalist Kat Bailey had the chance to ask Mr. Miyazaki and Mr. Yamamura some important clarifying questions about the design behind Armored Core 6. While there are a number of points that were discussed, including the general design philosophy of FromSoft, I'm going to focus on the more relevant to AC6 points. If you want to read the whole article for yourself, link is in the description, of course. As a quick first point, we do have casual confirmation that Miyazaki is largely not involved with the project, with him even joking that he's going to be playing as a fan, with his contribution being the overall game concept. That concept is what Masaru Yamamura of Sekiro fame is working off of, and while this is something I mentioned in my previous video, it's nice to see it more strongly confirmed here. Of course, the question and concern that seems to have been on everyone's mind is, will AC be open world now due to the success of Elden Ring? Tensions are so high about this, I've even been accused of perpetuating the idea when I'm just asking the same question as everyone else. Fortunately, that's been put to rest. When asked if this shot from the trailer with our backpack-clad core indicated that the game would be open world, Mr. Yamamura stated that the game is mission-based and not fully open. A statement later corroborated by Miyazaki, who said that there's an aspect of exploration, quote-unquote, in Armored Core 6. Yamamura goes on to say that the shot is a straightforward representation of the world of Armored Core 6, not an implication that we're going full Elden Ring. This does still leave me to wonder if we're going to have a greater freedom to roam and scavenge in these missions, which I feel could be fun. It's kind of supported by Mr. Miyazaki's statement about there being an aspect of exploration. It kind of reminds me of first-person horror exploration game Chernobylite, where you went on missions on specific maps that were fully explorable and had things to find beyond just the mission objective. Could be a good middle ground. We'll see if it's quite that expansive or if it's a more narrow type of exploration on these missions. So what's the gameplay like? It seems like the great success of the Soulsborne games seems to be of little concern to Miyazaki and Yamamura in terms of the development of Armored Core 6. They've reaffirmed that the point of the game is to build, customize, master your personal style of core, all the things that longtime fans of the series would expect. Miyazaki even went so far as to state that they're making no conscious effort to try and direct the game towards a more Soulsborne type of gameplay. That is a direct quote. He feels that, quote, having mechs or mecha as a theme is really about that high level of freedom that adjusting each individual part gives and how that affects the gameplay and the properties of your mech in combat, unquote. The focus is still going to be on ranged combat using guns, missiles, and other ordnance, with both handheld and back-mounted options, as is traditional in the series. However, Yamamura also seems to want players to be able to utilize melee, and has stated that they have some, quote, nice melee options, unquote, if you're so inclined. Something that I was worried about was that Yamamura's experience with Sekiro would flavor the moment-to-moment combat in Armored Core 6, but that has been addressed as well. Apparently, the focus is to continue on the attack, stay on the offensive, keep the opponent off balance, and make openings for yourself. There will be tempo shifts where, like, you're on the offensive and they're on the defensive, and then it'll switch, and then they'll be on the attack and you're pushed on the defensive, but it's not like we're looking at that parry system, it seems like. To me, this sounds way more like the way Bloodborne played than anything else, which I very much enjoy the idea of. I'm a huge Bloodborne fan, so if that's the kind of philosophy at play, cool, sounds good. The real question is how this will influence boss battles, and such battles are apparently going to be, quote, the highlight of the game, unquote. That is a little bit of a departure from at least what my experience with the series is. Again, I've played a lot during the PS2 era, played some Verdict Day. The older games mainly are my experience. And there were boss fights, but it wasn't the focus so much, so I'm curious to see how that's going to play out. You'll need to read the enemy's moves and adapt to them to gain an advantage, but in the aggressive and violent way that, quote, only mechs can offer. So we shouldn't expect to see these counters and parries so much as critical moments of damage created by constant aggression. And to me, it sounds like much more my speed. One point that's very exciting is the possibilities that From's hugely increased budget and influence put on the table. Miyazaki makes the point that he's actually, quote, extremely jealous, unquote, of the resources that the team can pull on now compared to when he directed Armored Core 4 back in the day. Yamamura then chimed in to say that the visuals of the game have been ramped up a lot, talking about the small details about how joints move and pieces are put together, how they all function, and how cool that is to see both in cutscenes and in gameplay. That's honestly one of the first aspects that drew me to Armored Core Nexus back in the day, so I love knowing that the dev team knows how cool it is and is on board with that same idea. That's excellent. Sound design, textures, the overall appearance of cores, it sounds like it's all being touched up, which is obviously great and what we would expect from any next-gen title, but it's always good to hear that they're thinking about it. Another question I've seen crop up a lot, and one I myself put forward in my previous video, was what Fire of Rubicon's approach to multiplayer would be. Given how some games, like Nexus, only included multiplayer for versus matches, while others in the series, such as 5, had sweeping multiplayer campaigns and wars as their main focus, I wanted to know what Armored Core 6 would be doing. Apparently, the main focus for 6 is, once again, the single-player story mode. There will be multiplayer PvP arena battles, but Yamamura was hesitant to discuss more, and I kind of get the implication from that there could be greater depth about the multiplayer that is yet to be revealed, so we'll have to see. I'm personally happy to hear that the single-player campaign is being fleshed out again. It would be really cool if we had this big multiplayer component again, but the single-player has always been my favorite part of any Armored Core game. Of course, we all know by now the long-debated difficulty of FromSoft games, and it sounds like Armored Core 6 is going to live up to the expectations set by its forebears. Yamamura says that they've tried to keep to the challenging side, with ups and downs for different missions and scenarios. The real focus, though, for difficulty seems like it's going to come in the form of how the player interacts with those scenarios. Different enemies and objectives and terrain clashing with your build and playstyle, and forcing you to adapt and grow to match the situation. This, of course, strikes to the heart of all my favorite FromSoft titles, Elden Ring being at the top of that list in terms of player customizability and approach, and it's one of the reasons that I can't stand Sekiro, so I'm very pleased to see that the tradition is being carried on. Yamamura himself even went on to discuss this very idea, about how in Armored Core, the battle begins in the garage when you're building your core, how you design it, and he acknowledged that it's a very different approach to difficulty than Sekiro's, quote, stoic one-track approach, which I agree with, and thinking about it, it makes sense that Sekiro didn't gel with me. I started FromSoft games with Armored Core. That's where I cut my teeth with their style of gameplay. And then Dark Souls really gelled with that idea. It was the same type of, well, I can build however I want and approach things how I want, much like Armored Core. That's what I like about this series of games. So Sekiro, not exactly my cup of tea. Glad to hear that they acknowledge that, and they're sticking with the original style for Armored Core 6. And finally, progression. There isn't a leveling system like one would expect from the Souls series in Armored Core, and as far as I'm aware, there never has been. That's a fact that's being maintained in Armored Core 6. Rather than gaining XP, you'll find and buy new parts to upgrade your mech, tuning and tweaking your build and the actual parts themselves to a perfect balance for your playstyle by the end of the game. Clear a mission, you'll get some credits, you can buy some new parts, especially if the shop updated, maybe equip a part that you got as a reward for a mission, and you'll keep making changes and building up your core until you become an unstoppable angel of destruction. Such is the Armored Core way, as it has always been, and hopefully always will be. This is true for both your weapons and your armor, and your thrusters, generator, kind of your core systems. And that, my friends, is all there is to say as for now for Armored Core 6, at least as far as I'm concerned. Again, there's other stuff to see in the actual article if you want to go and check that out. Lots of interesting stuff about like why From does apocalyptic settings and why they design games the way that they do and all that type of stuff. But in terms of the actual game mechanics and designs of Armored Core 6, I think that's all we need to know for now from this article. Fans of the series who were worried about Souls having too great of an influence over the game, worry no longer. Seems like it's all going to be good. I, for one, now have complete confidence that Fires of Rubicon is going to be a phenomenal return to form. Seeing it described by Mr. Miyazaki and Mr. Yamamura, it felt like coming home. It felt familiar, even just hearing them talk about it. Hopefully, you feel the same. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if you want to stay on top of the Armored Core news, please subscribe. Again, my name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. Have a good night, stay safe and healthy out there, and remember, be good to each other. Bye now.